Welcome to Sold with Webinars, a podcast that aims to uncover how the most successful experts, coaches, consultants, and e-course professionals sell their products and services with just one sales presentation or webinar. A simple sales webinar can transform the business and life of a solopreneur. And this podcast will show you how other experts just like you are generating 6 and 7 figures per year online with their webinars. So let's get started. Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel here with another episode of Sold with Webinars. And guys, you are in for a treat today. I just hopped off my interview with the amazingly talented Lukas Resheske, who has been writing webinars for his own clients. Very talented copywriter, and he's been hired by some of the biggest name internet marketers in the business. Now, I got a little geeky on this episode, as I tend to do when I get to speak with other brilliant marketers like Lukas, but I promise you, I promise, this is worth your time investment to dial in and listen to this episode. What was fascinating about this was Lukas and I talked about a project of his where he generated over $1 million from a webinar in a dying niche. So what we chatted about was really, really important in learning how to analyze your market, learning how to analyze your offers, and discovering how to pivot and how to create new angles for markets that may dictate if your offer is dying or not. So Lukas was able to revive an offer, a very powerful offer, by taking a unique angle. And so that's what we talked about on this episode today. And I know that if you listen to it and you pay attention to the psychology of what he's doing, this is going to drastically improve your conversions, and it's drastically going to make you a better marketer, make you a better advertiser, and make your course or your program sell like hotcakes. So I'm going to shut up now. Let's jump into today's episode. I know you're going to love it. Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel here with another episode of Sold with Webinars, and you guys are in for an amazing treat today. I want to welcome our guest for today's episode, Lukas Resheske, and the two of us have been virtually connected for a while now. When I say virtually connected, it's been mostly through Messenger. I've hired some of his copywriters. He's a copywriter extraordinaire. He trains other copywriters and aspiring copywriters how to build this skill, build this art. And so the two of us have had this connection for a while now. And I brought him on today because he is going to be talking about something very fascinating called this cross-industry idea of how he took a stagnated product idea and generated an extra $1.3 million in 3 months. So before I ruin what we're going to be talking about today, Lukas, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Joel. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be on the show. Like I was saying in the pre-interview, I love the content here. I love the people on this show. And I hope I can kind of live up to the standard, of all the cool stuff that people have taught here. So I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, man, we're going to have a lot of fun. So what I really want to avoid, this is me personally as the host, having two copywriters go back and forth. I know that we could probably go real deep and real technical. Okay. So we're probably going to go that route, but it's going to be very high level. We're going to help translate this for anyone who's listening and wanting to really turn this into actionable advice. So
can I ask, what's the typical, what would you say the sophistication level of the listener? Just so we don't go off the rails.
So the people listening right now, we have advanced marketers who are on here, and we also have people who are probably just dipping their toe in the water and exploring webinars to see if it's a right fit for them. So
cool. Okay.
Yeah. So
we'll go high low.
Yeah. So we'll go high level. And don't worry, I'll direct that part. I'll take care of that.
All right.
So
cool.
So do us a favor, right? Introduce yourself, brag about yourself, tell my listeners right now, who are you? What do you do? Where do you come from? And really just show them how big you are.
Sure. Yeah. I'm bad at bragging about myself, but I've been a copywriter in less pure form for about 6 years. I've been a strict copywriter for about 4 years. I had that period where I wasn't just sure what I wanted to do entrepreneurially, and then I just committed to copywriting. I originally found it because I accidentally fell into this whole entrepreneur online business world. I was supposed to be, in my own head, I was supposed to be career military. My family was military. My mom was military. My dad was military. My mom retired as a lieutenant colonel. And so I thought I was going to be in the military for 20 years. I was going to do that. And I went to school. I had an ROTC scholarship. I got commissioned as an officer. But halfway through college, couple things happened. I met my wife, very quickly realized that I didn't want to spend half my life deployed away from her. So instead of going into the active duty, I chose to go in the National Guard. And that was a big life choice because now my every career decision that I had made up until that point as a 19, 20-year-old person was geared towards being in the military for my whole life. And now I had to do something else. So I started looking around. I found business. I found Craig Ballantyne and Early to Rise and Mark Ford, luckily. And I found a couple other people. And my original mentor around copywriting was Mike Dillard. I worked for his company, The Elevation Group, when I was first getting out.
I didn't know you had a connection to Mike.
Yeah, that was my first one. That story's kind of funny. I don't know if we have enough time for it, but
we'll make time because I just broke down his List Grow webinar. It's
Webinar Vault. That beast. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's best automated webinar that I've ever seen to cold traffic. But anyway,
but that's his third or fourth really successful. I mean, so the Elevation Group was another example of an automated webinar that crushed for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think he did $20 million the first year with the Elevation Group. It was pretty insane. But yeah, so that was my exposure to him. I went to an event called the Underground Online Marketing Seminar, or something like Yannick Silver's event, on kind of a whim. I had no idea. I was brand new to this. I'm like, well, if I want to learn about this world, I have to go and be around the people who do it. And that was so I put it on the credit card. I came there. I listened to Mike Dillard's business partner at the time speak. And I'm like, wow, it was really cool. I love the keynote. I love where he was going. And so
who was this?
Robert Hirsch.
Okay. Cool.
Hirsch was I believe he was the CEO of that company for a while. And they've been partners on a couple other things. He talked at the event. I thought that was cool. In my ignorance, I went out back to try and say hi to him, just introduce myself to a keynote speaker because I didn't know that was the thing that you're not supposed to do. And so I stopped him in the hall and he was talking to somebody else and I was feeling really awkward standing next to him. But then he mentioned that he either said his phone number or was giving away his phone number to this person or something. And I heard it had a 720 area code, which was Colorado, which was where I lived. And I'm like, oh, and that was my in. I started talking to him. 20 minutes later, we were in the bar. 45 minutes later, I had a job out of college. And it was pretty cool. And so I went down there. I worked for the Elevation Group. I got to see that really cool operation. And Mike was always huge on learning copywriting as your primary skill. So that's what really sparked it for me. Awesome. And then kind of went from there.
So since you're terrible at bragging about yourself, let me brag for you. So you've done multiple 8 figures in results for some of your clients for the past 6 years. You're a 7-figure copywriter, generating 7 figures in fees from your clients, right? Some of your clients are Ty Lopez, Josh Turner, Orrin Claff, Ryan Levesque, and 150 others. So there you go. I'll brag for you because it is very impressive. You forgot to mention all of that. So
that's the website bio. My bad. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So, all right. Now, what I really want to talk about here, let's go tactical.
Okay.
You worked on a webinar that generated 1.3 million in 3 months. And the reason why you were able to get it to kind of spark up was because of this idea of cross industry. So set the stage for how this client approached you, what was the problem they were having, and let's build the stage for how we ultimately got to this super successful project.
Right. So the stage was the guy was looking to hire out the copywriting. He had always wrote it himself. He grew his company to multiple millions in yearly revenue on his own, but he was starting to phase himself out of the copy. So he brought me in to help with that aspect. I mean, he had seen that I worked with Ryan. And so he was like, okay, well, let's do this. But he also had an issue where the industry as a whole that he was in was suffering a little bit of a decline in attention and interest. He was in the LinkedIn marketplace. And so people weren't really talking about LinkedIn. And so that was kind of stagnating things. And on top of that, he had some competition that was pretty sophisticated. And in my world as a copywriter, I see declining attention and highly sophisticated marketing as what I would call stage 3 or stage 4 sophistication, which in my head means I have to do something different. I have to find something that the marketplace will respond to that gets them reinterested in the program. So that led me on the idea of figuring out this big idea and borrowing from Jay Abraham. I'm a guy, I like to cite my sources. So I don't like to make things up and pretend that I invented it. Borrowing from Jay Abraham, all of Jay's success is predicated on 2 things. Jay being and being able to take a good idea from one industry and move it to another and get insane results. That's it. I mean, he has an incredible body of work, but if you boil it down, it's those two things: his ability to partner and his ability to get different ideas for different industries. So I was thinking that, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll be on the lookout for an idea that I can grab from another industry. And it kind of fell into my lap when I was thinking about this project, because I read a lot, I try to stay aware. And I was reminded of this concept called the Gartner hype cycle. And the Gartner hype cycle is really well known in Silicon Valley because it's a curve that a guy measured on the media hype cycle and like the amount of trend use on words and things like that around technology based on its inception and its actual like point of usefulness or the network effect or whatever. And it kind of goes like that. We mapped the LinkedIn on like, I think it was Google Trends or something like that. And we noticed that it was on the decline of the Gartner hype cycle. So, okay, cool. There's our big idea. I wrote all the materials for that. I made the webinar for that. And the whole premise was that the hype cycle is attention. It has nothing to do with the exponential nature of the technology. So the value of the technology was still there. And as a matter of fact, the value of the technology, because it's a communication app on LinkedIn, is going up because the product itself was on an up curve as far as effectiveness, but it was losing attention. It was the perfect time to buy in.
All right. This is cool stuff. This is really cool stuff. All right. So nobody has ever mentioned the Gartner hype cycle on my podcast, either of my two podcasts. So I want to try and visually paint this for people. So like, show me what, I'm going to research it right now while we're on here, but show me.
Okay, I can do this. So it's, you've got your x-axis and your y-axis. The star is the start of the technology, like when it first comes into being, right? It undergoes like a nobody really knows about it type deal. And then it pops in attention, it dips, and then it kind of levels out.
Cool.
So like that.
Got it. All right.
The star is the start, right?
So for anyone listening right now, here's what basically happens. Something gets adopted, it goes on a massive spike, like really, really quickly. Kind of like, oh, something new, huge spike. Then I'm actually reading it on Wikipedia right now. It goes through technology triggers, that's introduction, where visibility is at 0. Then it, like very, very quickly, it goes to peak of a huge spike called peak of inflated expectations.
Yes. And that's
then it goes into a big drop, which is trough of disillusionment. And it basically kind of like slowly comes back up and levels off into a plateau of wherever it's going to end up being. So like big spike, big drop, eventually rising and leveling off. So at what point are you entering this project of your client? Like where
about halfway on the downslope.
Halfway on the downslope.
Yeah.
So you were literally able to go to Google Trends and see, oh, okay, like we're on our way down, but like, we're going to go back up. So you're able to kind of capture that and ride that wave back up.
Right. Yeah. The assumption being, of course, that the technology survives. But then when you dig into the research a little bit more on that particular project, you see a couple things. Number one, it just got acquired by Microsoft. Which is massive. Like the biggest work company for, computing brings in the biggest network for professionals. And I'm like, they're not stupid. We like to make fun of big brands for like car commercials, but the fact is they're not stupid. So they know there's value. They know that there's something there. And so that was what we ran with, basically. That was the story that we told on why it was beneficial to have a system on LinkedIn to generate leads and sales. And especially for professionals and service providers and things like that.
That's awesome. So I'm trying out Google Trends because I've used it before, but I haven't like done it like trying to like map out my project. Like I think that's like, so you did it basically to make sure that you knew that you could be successful, right? You didn't want to jump in a dying ship, I'm assuming. Maybe I'm making the wrong assumption.
I was pretty sure that LinkedIn wasn't going to die. I didn't think it was going to go the way of MySpace. I think that it was always going to be a resume site, a connection site, all that kind of stuff. So I was fairly confident in the product. And we weren't selling LinkedIn. We're selling like entrepreneurs going on and getting leads from LinkedIn. And I knew from his testimonials and his stuff that it was working. Like if you did it, it worked. And so that was like the interesting thing for me. But I was looking for that hook. I was looking for that interesting concept to talk about. And that's what I did.
Cool. So I was just playing on Google Trends and I had searched for Periscope, the Periscope app, because like for whatever reason, I'm like, that's what came to mind with like, I wanted to see where this whole, and it works. I mean, like, although Periscope is dying in my opinion, but it's dying because of competing technology that I don't know if they can overcome. So, all right, I digress. Great. So you have identified the opportunity for LinkedIn. Now, you said Jay Abraham focuses on partnerships and ideas, right? So assume now at this point, he signed you on, you've taken on the project. Like, what is going through your mind as you start to brainstorm to revive this product?
So that was the brainstorm. Like, a big part of it was figuring out the big idea and making that click, because when you get a good big idea as a copywriter, you kind of feel it.
Well, what was the big idea? Did I miss it?
It was the fact that the hype cycle was making LinkedIn less popular, but in reality, it was more effective than it ever was. And so, like, I forget the exact language of the copy because it was like, a couple of years ago, but the general gist of the whole package was, you're not paying enough attention. You're missing out. You're missing this opportunity. Like that kind of language, this FOMO style language, and then justifying it through the data and basically saying, look, LinkedIn's not going anywhere. It might not be popular. It might not be in vogue. It might not be like the thing that everybody's talking about, but it's working. And if you're a professional, then you care about what's working and not what's popular. And so that tone flowed through the entire funnel, basically.
I like that. So the big idea is you care about what's working and not what's popular. Right.
Yeah.
As business owners, like you really shouldn't care what's popular. You should be caring about what's working. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And that really appealed because, I mean, his marketplace was not obviously all male or anything like that, but his target market was slightly older men in professions. I would say that maybe at least 50% of his target market was in that kind of bracket, your mortgage people, your agencies, your insurance, all of that. Because that you kind of have to be in the professional services or in the profession or in corporate to be interested in LinkedIn in the first place. And that's who we attracted. And so that's who we were talking to. And those guys kind of have an idea of, I'm pragmatic. I care about results. I don't like the shiny object syndrome, even though I have it in the back of my head, but what I really want is the results. And that's who I view myself as. So we took that tone and we gave them data to support it. And then we went off with the product.
Okay, cool. So paint the picture now of what this, like, great. You've done your research. You're like, okay, I'm gonna head towards this theme. You've picked out the theme, which is, you don't care about what's popular. You shouldn't care about the hype. Maybe LinkedIn, the buzz is dying, but like, here's proof that it's actually working. So now, where is this automated webinar fitting into the grand scheme of the marketing campaign?
Right. And I do want to point out, because that's pretty important, like, this guy did have a strong brand. He had good testimonials. He wasn't starting from scratch. And so the big idea was also the dangerous concept that we're trying to fight against, which is a lack of interest. So what we realized throughout that launch was that we needed to hook people in as many ways as possible. And so what we utilized was a well-written report on a front end. We used a webinar that I wrote that was done live the first time to his list to generate ideas and results and validate. But then that was kicked over to automated. So they took the live version, they put it on automated as a on-demand replay type thing. And then so that gave them multiple modalities to check out this main idea. But we also took that report and put it into, because we spent some time on the report just to make sure that our findings were justified and all this stuff, and we wanted to present it as professional. And we cut that into a couple different videos. So we allowed them to see a few videos that would hammer home the points. It kind of laid out the webinar in a 3-video format, similar to Jeff Walker style launch, but more with all we wanted them to do was accept that big idea. Because if that clicked in their head, like, okay, I'm going to use a platform that's effective and not one that's shiny, then we were able to sell them on the system, because most of them didn't have a system to use the product. All those different modalities came into play. And warm traffic, cold traffic, it was converting really well, obviously better on warm. And then they also did several live webinars, they weren't the same as the webinar that I wrote in the first one, but they were reiterating the same points. They were showing some of the cool stuff that they had on offer, because it was a combo of, some services, the product, and I think they had a software that they were using as well. So it was this all-inclusive package that was really applicable for the target market. But the focus for the copy and the launch was hit them on everything they can. Like if they're not going to spend an hour on the webinar, try to get that seed planted in that 10-minute report or the 20-minute report, or maybe the video captures their attention. And because of his brand and because of this focus on getting them into the hook, the front end converted really well on cold and warm traffic. The other thing that made that launch a true blockbuster, and I think this is really important for more sophisticated marketplaces, is they leveraged the heck out of the 80-20 principle, which is the Pareto principle. 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. But also that usually there's 20% of your audience that is willing to pay more at every scale of 80-20, right? So if you take all the people who are interested in this product, you have an 80-20, 20% or so will buy, right? Of that 20%, there's an 80-20. And 80% of that 20% are just going to buy the main product. But the other 20% of all the buyers will buy something else. And they had an agency with back-end services that were high ticket. They had a live event, and they were able to roll all of those things up. And that's one thing that I don't notice a lot of people doing with webinars in particular, is having an upsell pathway, which is the VSLs and sales letter and sales funnels have done that forever. Having an upsell pathway is the key to making it in direct response.
Yeah.
But I mean, you talk about this on your podcast. Everybody's got this pie in the sky idea of a $9.97 product, and you just run it. And it's harder. If you have a sophisticated marketplace, it's hard to break even on that kind of thing when you're paying a team, when you're buying a funnel, like all this kind of stuff. So having those 80-20 offerings, especially in a professional context, like how many people do you need to pay for a $20,000 agency package before you double your profits? Not many. How many people do you need to pay for a $2,000 ticket to a live event or a $5,000 ticket to a live event before you double your profits again? It's not a lot. And if you're giving a result that transforms someone, especially in a business context, you have to do that. And so at the end of the 3 months between mastermind sales, agency sales, product sales, and software sales, that was what kind of gave them their return.
Awesome. So this is a pretty complex funnel, right? It wasn't just a single webinar piece. So there was like a lead magnet. You said there was a free report.
Yep, free report.
And then that translated into, repurposed into 3 or 4 videos for that multi-video. Where did the webinar come in? Was it after the videos, or could they kind of choose their own path? Like pick your poison.
It was released as a report, live webinar that got turned into the automated webinar, videos, then 2 live webinars. That's how chronological release time. But we made it so that they could come in at any one of those points. And I believe the warm lists started with the webinar, and then the cold traffic was getting the report and going into the webinar itself. They obviously had follow-on. They had salespeople if they needed them to go after the bigger sales. But that was, that's how they did it.
That's crazy complex. That's like, so you said it was a 3-month launch, right?
Well, it wasn't a 3-month launch. I think the launch itself was between pre-launch and actual time frame, probably 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks.
Yep.
And then over the next 2 months is when they were closing agency deals, making the offers on the back end. So over the course of 3 months was that total revenue.
What was the front end offer? Was it $9.97 or $19.97 or something?
I think it was $9.97.
Cool. So $1,000 front end, and then all the upsells and live events and whatnot.
Yep.
So talk to me now about like you said you wanted to hook as many people as possible. And the primary hook was listen, you may think that LinkedIn buzz is dying, but like it is super, super effective for this niche, right? In the world of marketing, like we all know, we have to figure out how to overcome as many shifts and as many beliefs as possible. Like what were some of those other beliefs that you extracted from your research and ultimately implemented during this campaign, like throughout the webinar?
So that's a great question. It's twofold. I think there are really common objections and really common things that come up with everyone whenever they get over the hump of accepting an idea, right? Because then all the stuff comes up, and the stuff is the same for everybody, but the words they use and the thoughts they have to describe the stuff are different. And so you're not so much searching for if you're searching for how they're saying it. I don't have them memorized off the top of my head, but I have 9 different types of buyers that I found from, I believe it was from Melanie Saladino. She's another copywriter. 9 different buyer types, and they correlate with 9 different primary objections. And usually what I try to do is weave those into the copy so that because the copy is just a salesperson. So you're trying to weave the answer to their objections into the copy as you go. That's how I structure my content. That's how I teach my people to structure their content at a strategic level. But in my eyes, the body copy is designed to be intriguing, be educational if it can be, but not at the expense of helping them get over these objections to actually taking action.
I love that. Educational if it can be. It's like, it's never, I mean, for a sales webinar, it shouldn't be the primary focus of being educational. It's almost like it should support your main thesis of ultimately making the sale and letting them know that there's value behind this gated product or whatever.
And a lot of people, I mean, I don't know if anybody listening to this podcast would feel this way because they're probably pretty focused on direct response and they get it. But a lot of people don't like that idea that, you know, they would prefer to believe that you can just educate someone and then out of gratitude, that person will go and purchase the product that you're selling or the service that you're selling. But human minds don't work that way, and it's not our fault. It's something where when you think you have the answer, you're super grateful, but you're not ready to take another action. And you think that you either can go do this one thing that now is consuming your mind and you're excited about that. And it's actually quite a big disservice, at least in my experience. If someone thinks they can do something and then they run off and try and then they hit a wall, well, that was module 2 in the course. You know, it was going to help them get over that wall, but they ran off instead and tried to do it. So if you actually care about the results someone gets from your content, I think you have to prioritize the sale of that person over the front end, you know, what's the word? Like reciprocity driven, like education.
Yep. Yeah. Goodwill. So, providing goodwill. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a delicate balancing act. And I do believe that it is market specific. I think some markets really do kind of need a little bit of goodwill, whereas other markets you can get away with it. But that's really...
Well, usually the goodwill's like, at least in my experience, the goodwill's a proof element.
Yeah.
Your ability to teach and your ability to show that you know what you're talking about it helps in a sophisticated marketplace. Yep. That's why we went with the high data approach with this one webinar, where we wanted to justify what we were saying with data rather than, you know, emotion and hype and you're going to make $1 million in 7 days kind of crap. But, you know, like we wanted to emotionally get them moving through data. And I think that's very possible.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, like, you know, we were chatting before this call. A lot of people are focused on stories. They're focused on getting people emotionally involved in the story. But in my experience, I've found that if you do data-based reasoning and you kind of like lead them through this argument the way a lawyer would, that's almost as effective, if not more effective, than like an anecdotal story in some cases. Because nobody is, if you can check Twitter, nobody's fact checking as you go. So
they're trusting whoever they're listening to at that point.
And if you're an ethical marketer and you're using real numbers, then that's okay. If you're making things up, then obviously, you know, screw you. But if you're leading them through a logical thing, like this is the data, this is the chart, this is what this says, this is, you know, like you're making it very, very easy to say yes to whatever you prescribe. And that's educational, but it's also not something that's going to send them off on their own. They're just accepting of the idea over time.
Yep.
So
it's almost like you kind of have to pick one. You either are going to go all story-based and hype-based and sell on their emotions, or you're going to be the fact finder. And there's a lot of value in being the fact finder because you can't dispute the evidence. You can always dispute stories and be like, oh, I don't know if I believe him or whatever. And I don't even know how to measure the effectiveness between the two. Like if story selling is better than fact finding. But I know Mike Dillard, he's all facts. I mean, that's all he does. And you watch his, like, I just did his breakdown. It's inside the webinar vault. And his List Grow webinar, there's no hype. There's very few stories. The best analogy that he used was applying the Starbucks analogy. I'm not going to ruin it for people listening right now. Like
Right.
you can go check it out inside the vault, but, and I've watched his Elevation Group webinar too. And it's like, he goes so deep into his facts. Like he went back to, did you help write that webinar?
The Elevation Group? No, I did not. I was nowhere near that good.
I would have like given you a virtual hug if you did, because it's fantastic.
It is. It's so, yeah.
Well, because he goes back to like, number one was timing. So that came out during like right at the recession. And then number two, like he went all the way back to like, I think it was like the fall of the Roman Empire, and just started to like relate the two situations. And I'm just like, wow. Like, yeah, that is like, he made it so like, and you can't dispute what he's talking about.
Exactly. I love documentaries. I love educational TV programming, all that kind of stuff. They've been convincing and persuading people for a long time. And they don't have to like, you know, sit and use the reality show type rags to riches thing to do it. So, you know, I'm naturally, I don't know if you do the Colby thing or if you know about Colby tests, but I'm a 9434. I'm a fact finder. That's what I do. And so I tend to like be more biased towards the data focused stuff with a healthy respect for stories, because it helps contextualize everything. Right? You can't just throw a study at someone and hope they understand it. But
that's why copywriters get like talented copywriters get paid so much money, because they know how to do that balance. They know like, all right, fine. Like I can go find millions of facts and that'll help. But like, you also don't want to bury them in facts, because they're going to be like, oh my God, I feel like I can't do this. Right. Same thing with stories. And it's like just this delicate balancing act. So I love it, man.
I feel like because you mentioned you don't know when, or like, and it's hard for me too. You don't know when to just decide to use a story versus data, right? For me, that's huge on target market. If I know I'm talking to, like, for example, Mike Dillard was marketing to, for lack of a better term, and this is not his entire market demographic, but for the Elevation Group, grumpy old men. It was a financial newsletter. You know, they've got the thing, the GOM or whatever. I think Bob Bly invented that. And so he knew that those guys loved the History Channel. They loved the Discovery Channel. They liked those ideas, but they needed to see the context, because for them, the subconscious argument of history repeats itself, you know, excess is bad, like all this kind of stuff is playing back there. And Mike masterfully weaves that into his story around the crash and the recession at a really opportune time. So he nailed it. But you can feel that same thing in the List Grow webinar when you look at it too. You can feel that sense of all of the stuff he's saying makes sense to you in the back of your head. Because not only is he using the data to make his point, but you're virtually nodding as you go through the thing. You're just accepting of it, because he's also weaving in that subconscious like thing that you already believe. If you're the right candidate for the product, you're going to believe the things that he's just confirming for you.
The thing that Mike did so well on the List Grow webinar was he hit the largest audience possible. And in like, that takes such practice, like being able to speak without excluding people.
Right.
I mean, it's a fantastic skill that he has, because it's really a biz op, like, but it's not positioned as a biz op. It's positioned as how to grow your audience and how to monetize your audience. But anyone listening to it, like I listened to it about 10 times and I bought his product. I wouldn't consider I'm definitely not a newbie. And he wrote it so a newbie could get it, but he also allowed more sophisticated individuals to relate to it and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I need this too. And that is a fantastic skill and very, very difficult to master, which is why I use that as my first webinar vault breakdown. Yeah. So I wanted to go back to your LinkedIn program, right? And I've been fascinated with at what point we enter the mind of your prospect, right? So let me give an example, and then I'm going to ask you how you approach this. Last year, we were running a webinar to try and sell my webinar training program, and it was just bombing. I mean, I admit it to everybody, like we lost money. I mean, we made sales, but like we were not profitable at all. And I realized that it came down to, what am I selling? Am I selling a methodology, or am I selling a tool? Like, am I selling a strategy? Am I selling a methodology, or am I selling a tool? And in reality, the way that I was positioning it, which it was, I was trying to sell the tool of a webinar, and it was really, really difficult. The sales approach of that was really, really difficult. And we changed it, and we've now gone, like that's how we created the Webinar Vault, because we changed it from methodology and strategy to selling a tool. And we can be way more direct with selling a tool.
Yeah.
With LinkedIn, I feel like there could be that tool aspect. Like people think LinkedIn is a tool. So when you started marketing to cold audience, whether you're marketing that report or marketing the webinar, what was the language that you guys were using to get them in? Were you leading with LinkedIn, or were you taking a step back saying like, oh, if you want to grow your business, I'm going to show you something? Like, were you leading with LinkedIn as that, or?
Actually, that's a great question, because it reminds me of what we were doing. We actually essentially did a secret lead. The tone of the report was I added together the combined value of whatever LinkedIn and Microsoft was worth. And so it was like 6.3. I don't know what the cost or what the number was, but it was like the $6 billion something that you don't even know about, or that you've never heard of, or something like that. That was the tone of the front end for cold traffic. And the reason we did that was specifically because of the decline in attention for LinkedIn.
Yes.
We didn't want that word. Yeah. We didn't want that word to trigger the not for me mentality. Because like I said, the whole funnel was just getting them to click and look at the idea. And once they got the idea, it made sense for everybody. But
when was the idea of LinkedIn revealed? Was it in the report?
In the report, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't, so one guy right now is doing a really good secret lead for local marketing agencies. He's basically talking about this service that he does before offering a website that converts at like 80%. And he just goes and leads on. For a while, all his ads are like that. His pre-webinar emails are like that, and he only reveals on the webinar, and it kills. Like, people are pissed because he won't reveal the thing sooner, but it kills. It gets a lot of attention. I forgot his name though.
Is it Mike Schmidt and AJ Rivera?
Yeah, it's that.
They're on the podcast.
Yeah.
So, I know them. Like they're awesome friends of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were on the podcast, and so they were our first sold webinars case study. Like, they made their first $250,000 just from listening to this podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did they implement that because of something they heard here, or was that like, wow?
I mean, I don't know specifically, but I mean, like, they eventually got to that different. They're running weekly live webinars. And
So I bring that up because secret leads are interesting. So, because they did it fantastically. And when you can really nail a secret lead, or when you can really nail an interest thing, I've got this whole, like, it's nerdy, but I've got this whole concept called the Big Four. And it's your target market, their primal stuff, their market awareness, and their market sophistication. And awareness and sophistication have 5 levels and stages: 1 through 5 on awareness, stage 1 through 5 on sophistication. When you reach a certain point of awareness and sophistication, you can no longer lead with the thing that you feel like you want to, right? Like, your webinar course is an example. Mike Schmidt is another example. Dillard is another example. My stuff is another example. And that's not a bad thing. It just means that you're marketing to a big enough audience where you have to use something other than the thing to grab their attention. Mm-hmm. And that's where copywriters really, can help. I guess, if that makes sense.
Expand your audience. That's really what it is. Because
each awareness level has like 10 times more people in it than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
So your level 1 awareness is just your audience, your people who are aware of you. Some people have, like Ty Lopez, millions of people. Other people have 1,000 or less. Yeah. But as soon as you get up to like level 4, level 5, where someone's desire aware, they may have an inkling for getting a list grow product. Maybe they want to grow a business. Maybe they want to do a webinar, but they don't know what a webinar is really. There's tens of millions of people in that audience, but they're not going to respond to anything direct. They're not going to respond to a tool. They're not going to respond to, and if the marketplace is sophisticated, which it is, there's lots of webinar experts. There's lots of options for different types of webinars. It's something where understanding the mentality of the marketplace comes into play and helps.
100%. So like the campaign that we ran before, which is a webinar to sell our webinar course, when we were leading with the tool, we were leading with the webinar. Like in the ad, it was like, I'm going to show you how to build $1 million webinars for yourself. Mm-hmm. We were leading with a tool. Market was already sophisticated, and they already had this idea. We had so many things going against us, which were, we had a lot of people who, even though they enjoyed the presentation, like, oh, it's still too difficult for me. And I was giving them my software slide set, which was helping them build it. But, and we were making sales, which meant like our market was on point, but it was the method of where we were selling. And so
exactly,
we are going to be reselling that on a webinar, but it is kind of more taking a different approach where we're going to be having a secret lead, and to get the biggest captive, like the biggest audience. So our cost per lead had to go down. Like that was one of the things that killed us, was our cost per lead was so high because we were leading with a tool. And that was either repelling, it was attracting some people, but mostly repelling. Like they weren't interested because they've already told themselves that a webinar is not for me.
Yeah.
And so that was going against us. And even if they registered, like they didn't want to sit on a webinar to be sold a webinar product. Like, oh man, like it was such a valuable lesson to learn, to go through it. Cause it's like, it makes it so much more valuable when we write webinars for other clients, because it's now more strategic of like, okay, what am I really talking about?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to go back to the secret lead, because this is super valuable. Like if you're listening right now, like I want you to share this podcast with every single marketing friend, because like this is going to be worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like this process that we're going through, Lukas and I are going through right now, like I guarantee you it's worth so much money to your business if you apply it and you understand what we're talking about. Okay. So you understood with Google Trends that they were on a decline of awareness, or what was it? Is it in the Gartner hype cycle? It was visibility. A decline of visibility. And so you led with a secret lead to kind of capture the biggest audience possible and then resell them on LinkedIn being the opportunity, being what they need, regardless of hype. Like it is the effectiveness. And here's all the data that I'm telling you, right? So in that report, you sell them on LinkedIn. What is then the webinar showing them? Like if the report's showing them like LinkedIn is the thing, then where are you taking them through on the webinar to ultimately get them to invest?
So it was a long webinar. And so the first part of the webinar was essentially reselling them on the idea of being there. And because once they accepted that LinkedIn was a good thing to do, now we had to get them excited about doing it right away. We had to get them excited about using a specific system to do it. And so from that point, we spent, the first few minutes kind of talking about the same stuff we talked about in the report, but with greater detail, or, with more anecdotal stories, more examples from clients of his, things like that. And then we flowed into basically how this can work for you, what some of the mechanics are. And then the last part of the webinar was combined with pitch, focused on really showing the nitty gritty of like what it would take to do this on your own, to try and figure it out on your own. And so I say traditional direct response in the sense, I'm not trying to be evasive. I'm just saying once we got them on the big idea, we took them through a pretty typical sales argument of, if you accept this idea and you have these objections, then here's the answers to all of your objections, and here's a silver platter solution for you at the end. And Dillard does this fantastically, where he makes you accept this, the thing in the beginning, answers your objections throughout, and then gives you the silver platter at the end. That's actually a term I learned from Yannick Silver.
The silver platter?
The silver platter. Yeah, the silver platter. Because when you're watching something like that and you're interested in the result, one of the things that, like with your webinar, for example, or your webinar product, for example, sometimes they'll hit the end and go, I love this idea, but I don't have time. I don't know how. I don't think I can. Those kinds of the stuff, right? When the stuff comes up. And the sales just knocked those down as we went, using data. We showed inside the members area, like we just kind of like gave them what they needed to make sure that they could make a solid decision. But also primed the outcome rather than the program as like the primary goal, right?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That is so refreshing to hear.
Yeah, because that leveraged the upsells.
Like, nobody cares that they're buying a course. Like they really don't. And like every time that I'm reviewing somebody's webinar, it's like, I'd like to invite you to join my super awesome online course. I'm like, stop selling a course. Like, number one, it devalues what you're selling because it takes away from the end result. Like you call it online course, like, oh, you're giving me a bunch of pre-recorded videos. Like in their mind, immediately that's what they think. And that's just from value establishment. Stop selling courses. And I preach it so much.
And that's big. And these guys were lucky in the sense that they had some implementation help. I think they had like coaching and Q&As and stuff like that. They had software associated with it that they were building on the back end. So they had kind of the full Monty on their offer. but they also position the outcome to leverage the upsells where, if someone didn't want to take a program for $1,000, they could still get the leads from the agency at 20,000. They still could sign a retainer agreement to work with these guys over a long term. And in that particular offer, that makes a lot of sense. But if you apply it to other offers, you can do, done for you, you can do done with you, you can do coaching, you can do upsells, all this stuff on almost any offer that can be done on a webinar. Mm-hmm. It takes a little bit of brainstorming, but you can kind of nail it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, like I said, it was a really long webinar, and I don't want to try to be evasive on the exact content, but we really didn't do anything super special on the webinar other than just answer everything that we possibly could. I don't know if you've done a breakdown of Sam Ovens's webinar funnel or any of like his.
Not yet. It's been recommended. He hasn't targeted me. I can't find it. I haven't looked hard. I'm just.
That's funny. You must not have clicked on a website because he'll follow you around forever, like until you die. But I only bring it up because I've done a little breakdown for my own purposes, and his webinar is long, like 2.5, maybe 3 hours.
Yeah.
And the second half of it is all Q&A and FAQ and just staying on and answering as many questions that have come up in previous webinars as possible, because his is automated. But they did the same thing where they stayed on for Q&A at the end. They were very focused on getting everybody's questions answered, because especially with like
that's
a business
that's all sales right there.
Yeah. Because everybody's, I call this the prime objection, and it's, will it work for me? That's really like, once they've accepted the idea and they want the outcome, that's the only thing in their head. Mm-hmm. It'll come out in different ways and they'll say different words to describe it, but that's the prime objection. Yep. Will this work for me? And if you can say it in as many ways as you want, but if you don't say, yes, Sherry from Tanzania, this will work for underwater basket weavers, then Sherry from Tanzania is not going to believe you. And I understand, like, some people kind of make light of that, like the snowflake syndrome or, all this kind of stuff of like thinking that they're super special and unique. But at the end of the day, it's a business. Like, yes, it is unique. And you are a unique person. You have unique needs. Like, it's impossible for a person on a webinar to say, of course, I know this is going to work for you in your situation. Like, and so I'm always happy to answer that question for anybody who asks.
Yep. That's awesome. So the prime objection, will it work for me? And like, you do need to call it out. Like, you need to call a spade a spade. Like, you're probably wondering, like, we do that all the time. Like, we literally will put on the screen, the slide, whatever. Like, that's how we transition between our 3 or 4 pieces of content in the webinar. It's like, oh, you're probably thinking, so right now you're like, oh, I get what you just taught, but you're probably thinking X. And I will put those words right on the slide, right on the screen. But you're probably thinking X. Well, actually, that's what we're going to be talking about in the next piece of content. And you're just you're raising the objections if it's not clear in their mind. Because that's the other thing too, is your audience may have a form of your objection, but it's the actual objection is not clear in their mind. And if you are able to crystallize that and then bring it to light, because they're like, oh yeah, that's really what I'm thinking of. Yeah. And then you're able to crush it. Like, you're entering that conversation that's in their mind, which is any copywriter who's studied anybody. That's like one of the most important things you can do, is enter that conversation that's already in their head.
Exactly. That sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. I think people make a mountain out of a molehill, because when you're talking to a human and you're passionate about the thing that you do and how it can help them, if you're if you pretend to be sitting across from your person that you're trying to sell, you're not going to have trouble reading their facial expressions when they're like hesitant on something that you say. It's not going to be a thing. So that when an objection is going to happen, when you're saying something, you can probably think in the back of your head, this is what the person might say in response. Like, I'm going to help you grow your online business to $100,000 within 45 days. And then the person goes, okay, I've heard that before. And then, so if I immediately say, and guess what? You've heard people say that before, but the reason why this is different is because, and then the person goes, wait a minute. And then you say it's different because I use Facebook ads and they're super effective in targeting your people. And they're like, oh, everybody uses Facebook ads. And like, but I don't use Facebook ads like everybody. I have a very specific way of doing it. And they're like, okay, what? And like, and you don't actually have to spend more than $10 a day to do this. And they're like, huh? And so most people can have that conversation if they're like talking back and forth to themselves, or they're imagining their customer sitting across from them. That's what I teach my guys, like, and girls. which is imagine your person sitting across from you and have that conversation. And all of a sudden copy becomes a lot easier. It's not this like, oh, I got to put all the objections in and I got to make sure that they're good and the psychology is fine. But it ends up being a conversation between two people.
So I want to bring this back to, like, I knew we were going to go down rabbit holes, and that's totally fine. Like, this was awesome.
Yeah, sorry.
That's why I prefaced it in the beginning. I'm like, we're going to go, like,
sorry,
I know we're going to go deep. So I want to really bring it back because I think I know the answer to this, but I want my listeners to know, like, you helped somebody revive a product that was dying. Maybe not completely dying, but like it just wasn't on the growth.
It was hard. It was getting harder. Yeah.
It was getting really, really hard. Right. And so when this client hired you, did they hire you to be like, I want you to write a sales letter for me. I want you to write a webinar for me. Or did they hire you with the specific purpose? Like, I need a new strategy. Like, I need a new, like, what was that
one?
He wanted to hire you for strategy, right?
He did. And he did specifically because so I like to be really honest and like transparent when I do this stuff. But when I worked with Ryan Levesque, I worked with him for a long time and coached a lot of the people in that program. And I helped, but did not write the copy for one of his biggest launches. And the way that I helped was I helped come up with the big idea in that launch. It was a group effort. It was a collaborative effort, but we were all on the phone and I kind of like spouted this idea out. And when I mentioned that to Josh, because I think Josh and Ryan had worked together, they were in programs together, all this kind of stuff. That's what keyed in on. That's what he wanted because he knew that
you need a new angle.
In a sophisticated marketplace, you have like Eugene Schwartz wrote the book Breakthrough Advertising in 1964. 1966 or something like that. It's widely regarded as probably the best book on copywriting ever written. And when he talks about creating a new mechanism for a marketplace, it happens in every single marketplace that gets competitive. You get a new market, you get people making claims, you get the competition making bigger claims and and they fight each other until they reach this point of ridiculousness. And then the market doesn't believe anything anymore. But the person who comes up with a new concept, a new way of saying something, a new way of making them believe the old claim is now head and shoulders above the competition. The competition can't compete anymore unless they go and steal the mechanism and go up, and that's stage 4. So like it happens, but that's how you shift. And every sophisticated marketplace shifts that way. Every single one, no matter where you're at. So
you know what's happening right now in the world of internet marketing? Like there's this huge war that is happening between ClickFunnels and a new competitor that came out, which is Kartra. And it is like, this is such a valuable lesson right now because when ClickFunnels came out, it was revolutionary. It was the first, or at least as far as I know, the first funnel building software. But, and this is also a testament to like how quickly software evolves. Like I can't stand ClickFunnels right now. It's super buggy and like, I loved it the first couple of years, but like Actionetics is a piece of junk and like they just built on like selling the hype and it does basic functionality and it was good and it was ahead of the, it killed lead pages and it was going after Infusionsoft. But right now, like I'm actually going to be doing a whole other podcast on this, like the whole, like the war that's brewing, because I think it's going to be a big war because, Russell and Fulsame, like they're good buddies. They learn from each other and like now they're going to be going head to head. And I think I'm not going to spoil my assumption. I do predict that one will win and it's not going to be based on, it's going to be based on something other than features and functionalities of the actual tool. So, but yes, I mean, like claims, like they keep going back and forth, back and forth. And I've heard amazing things about Kartra and so I'll be checking it out, but this is fast. So what that's saying, so go ahead.
Well, no, and you nailed it because that is a market becoming more sophisticated. In this case, Kartra is a new player and they're entering the market at a certain level of sophistication. So they knew they had to come in and compete with ClickFunnels and with Lead Pages and Unbounce and those guys. I was just talking with my students about this actually because Kartra is really fascinating and how they launched it. But they came in hyper direct, like people are aware of Frank, they're aware of Mike, they're aware of Andy. They came in very direct at level 1 awareness. They hyped up Kartra in a beta program. So people were even hearing about the name from the beta product people. And then they entered the market at a sophistication level 3 with a new mechanism. And the new mechanism was all in one, because ClickFunnels is close. It does the page building. You can buy the domain, you can hook up Actionetics and you can hook up the affiliate program, but it's not all the way there. It doesn't have a cart.
Shopping cart sucks. Their membership software sucks.
Exactly.
all the additional features they sell you on suck. Like the funnel building part is fine. The page builder is fine, but everything else is like garbage.
Yeah. It's like, it's a sum in one product versus an all in one product. Yeah. And so Kartra came in, new mechanism, boom, this is it. All you got to do is buy Kartra and now you have an online business. Like,
and they also added a couple of features. So like, I don't want to go deep into this rabbit hole.
Right. But you nailed it. Yeah, that's the point.
Why they hired you in the first place with this LinkedIn program. And the big thing that they hired you for is a big idea. Like, how can you create a new entry point for this market that captures a whole new audience so we can now change the outcome of what's been happening. Like, we're going head and shoulders against all the other, LinkedIn programs. LinkedIn's the best tool. Like, when you can lead with the tool, like that can only last for so long. Just like what we were doing with the webinar. You're leading with the webinar and it failed miserably. But, so we'll be entering from a new standpoint, probably a secret lead. And well, actually what we're doing is we are selling just the tool directly. We're just going straight to the sales page because it's hyper aware. Like, they don't need to be sold on webinars. They just need to know what can so we're selling just the software, which is, help me build the webinar as fast as humanly possible. So, dude, this was amazing. So I want to recap real quick because we talked about so many things, and I do want to kind of distill it for those, less experienced marketers so they can understand really where we're coming from here. So you did 1.3 million in 3 months with this automated webinar using the cross-industry approach. And what you meant by that was essentially the Gartner hype cycle, which getting super analytical, that is awesome that you used Google Trends to literally identify where they were on this Gartner hype cycle. So you understood, okay, great. Hey, Mr. Client, like I'm proving, like, based on your sales that its profitability is down because people probably just are sick of hearing about LinkedIn. Well, here, yes, that's validated. Let me look at this at this trend. So then you leverage that to, you knew that you had to come up with a new big idea and not lead with LinkedIn as the solution, but lead with something else that got their interest and remind that audience that, hey, about LinkedIn and ignore the hype. Like, it is still by far the most productive way to grow your business and prove it to you. So you led that with, just a quick download to capture that audience. Cause like, that's the big thing too, is gaining that audience. Like, if they're already sophisticated, it's going to be really, really expensive to gain that audience. So you'll have to take a step back and hit a new approach to gain that market share. And so you created that new big idea. You focused on conquering their objections. You didn't teach much.
We taught, but we didn't let the teaching get in the way of the program. I guess that would be the best way I would explain it.
So did you show them any tactics in the webinar? Like, were you saying, hey, here's how you do this? Like, did you show them a messaging strategy?
Yeah, we did, because part of the program was, so I think actually Dan Henry might have talked about this. I don't know if he explained it, but he has this concept called teach step 2. We kind of did something like that before I'd ever heard about that, where if you teach them either how to find connections or how to write the message or how to follow up or any of that kind of stuff, and then you go and sell the system, here's exactly what to say, here's how to automate it, here's how to all this stuff, it becomes a pretty compelling offer, because you either see that you can do this on your own, it takes a lot of time, or you can purchase the program and get it all on a silver platter, or you can have us do it for you for 20 grand. Like that kind of flow, if that makes sense.
Yep, 100%. So you did teach, but you taught a piece in the middle. So they you didn't give them the starting point so they could go out on their own. That's awesome.
We didn't make it seem simpler than it was.
Right.
I think that's a big thing.
You did make it seem simpler than it was?
We did not.
Oh, you didn't? Yep.
We did not make it seem simpler than it was. When we were teaching, we're like, look, there's all these steps to it, but there's the hard way and then there's the easy way, and the easy way is buying the program and the software to help it. So that was the tone that we took. And that was pretty effective for anybody who'd already committed to the outcome. Yeah. But that's why the webinar was so long, because we wanted them to commit to the outcome and understand where they're at first. And then once they were committed, they could move on to actually investing to make it go a ton faster.
So last question. Did you do any sort of, I'm always fascinated with how some people create offers on webinars, because I've seen a lot of webinars that do the perfect webinar style, fast action bonuses, which I get it. And it can help. Did you guys do any of that? Like, did you overload it with bonuses? Did you do fast action bonuses? I've seen both sides where it works really well. And I've seen, guys like Dillard and John Nemo. Actually, John Nemo's in the LinkedIn space too. Like I think he does fast action bonuses, but he's not overloading it. Like, it's just...
We had a couple.
Yep.
We had a couple bonuses, but no fast actions. And the bonuses themselves were high value. Like, one-on-one with our sales coach, like that kind of value. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like one of the final objections that was going to be hard to get over no matter what was, how does this work for me? Or, like I would like a step-by-step, or I'd like a specific plan for my industry or my area because I'm unique. And by offering the bonus of a call with the sales manager or a call with the marketing guy, that assuaged that. It's like, if you buy this program, you're going to get help. And I think that was a big part of it, because it wasn't necessarily a coaching program, like step-by-step, we're going to lead you through this workshop. It was content, but adding that added the value, added the spark, and made it really convert pretty well. And also was essentially a sales opportunity. I mean, it was a bonus to get people to buy the product, but every time someone got on the phone with the marketing or sales manager, it would be a value question, like, do you want us to just do this for you type thing? Mm-hmm. So they leveraged a lot of that. And I don't want to hide the fact that it was a complicated funnel. And it was, it wasn't just like we found the big idea and then that's all it took.
I don't know why. I would have turned that into an automated webinar funnel like immediately, like the lead magnet and then an automated webinar, and I would have just been pumping that. And maybe he did for 3 months. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
I've just seen so many people do it successfully, and I've never been a fan of the 3-part video series, and like, I'm simplistic. That's just me. But I totally get why other people they try and maximize every lead, which by all means,
and it worked well for
takes a lot more resources to plan it out and build it out and do it properly. So
exactly. Yep.
Well, dude, Lukas, all right, man. So to wrap this all up, we already did part of the recap, but the big thing too that really opened up the floodgates to get this flood of sales in is you help with the big idea. You developed a new secret lead, a new entry point into something that already existed, and that's the secret, right? The secret lead was the secret.
Yeah, to capture the attention and to introduce the new mechanism that we were talking about, kind of like this hidden network. But yeah, and that was one of the fun things. One of the things that I read about that I really like about Gene Schwartz is that he was a fantastic copywriter, but he was also very humble in the sense that he said, big ideas are not created, which is like a slap in the face to every Mad Men watcher ever, right? They're found, they're discovered. And I think that makes them easier to get, or at least it's easier to look for them in the first place, and not be afraid to start. Because I found the Gartner hype cycle. I did not create it. I didn't make my own chart. I sought outside of my sphere, found something that looked like it would work, tried it, and it worked. And I think that's what people really underestimate, just how valuable it is to go across industries, to pull cool ideas, to look at something from a new angle and then go from there.
That's awesome, dude. So where can people connect with you? Because this has been like, we should sell this training. You want to sell this training, this podcast?
This would be the worst course ever, because they'd be like, this is a great thing. I love the content I'm getting. And then we're like, oh, and then this rabbit hole over here. Yeah. We're like, where's the payoff?
That's why it makes for a good podcast.
It's great to listen to. So if you're running or something, hopefully.
Yeah.
But you can connect with me. My first name is spelled with a K, Lukas, and Lukas. I've just seen it misspelled a bunch. And Resheske is Resheske. I'm on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find. If you Google that spelling, you can find my content and maybe like a pirated course or something. I don't know. People steal my shit stuff. My bad.
That's fine.
But yeah, that's where I am. My website is lukasresheske.com. I don't have any lead magnets. I don't have any stuff for you. Oh, if you want a deep dive into the stuff I was talking about, like a Big Four or any of that, I put my entire first copywriting mentorship program, the first iteration of that, onto my website for free. No odds. You can just go get it. It's more than a dozen hours of content. I really explain the Big Four and all that kind of stuff. So feel free to dive in, do that. Connect with me on Facebook. I don't have a max friends list yet, but I'm never going to do one of those I'm purging everybody, so comment with a GIF type posts. Just message me anyway. Yeah, other than that, just be happy to connect with anyone in your audience. And this was super fun. This was probably the most fun podcast that I've done in a long time. So I appreciate that.
Good. I love having fun. So, so go connect with Lukas. He's a super smart individual, if we didn't prove that already on this episode, and let him know that you heard him on the Sold Webinars podcast. And yeah, go share this with your audience. Give us a rating on iTunes and just refer to this episode, because I know any marketer listening to this, they're going to be able to extract money out of this gold mine. So Lukas, Appreciate you, man. It was a blast and it was a pleasure. And for everyone else listening right now, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and we look forward to giving you the next one. If you're serious about launching your own sales webinar, here are a few resources to check out. For free access to the software that we built internally for the webinar agency to train our copywriters, head to soldwithwebinars.com to sign up for a free trial to the Webinar Vault and get access to regular webinar breakdowns that are generating hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one on your webinar project, head to thewebinaragency.com for more details. And finally, be sure to subscribe to my other podcast, Experts Unleashed, where I interview changemakers and entrepreneurs to discover how they create opportunity to turn their expertise into income. Be sure to join us next time, and I'll see you there.